I learned the true cost of understanding on a Tuesday. It wasn't a day marked by tragedy or great loss, just a damp, gray afternoon in early October, but it was the day the foundation of my life, built on the unstable concrete of my parents' approval, finally cracked and swallowed everything. I was 28 years old and had just closed the pre-seed round for my FinTech automation platform, Aethel. I had spent my entire adult life building this, turning down small loans from my parents, insisting on self-sufficiency as the ultimate currency. I walked into their house expecting acknowledgement, maybe a toast. My parents' home, a sprawling monument to old money and manicured lawns, felt particularly suffocating that day. My sister, Clara, was already there, positioned strategically on a kitchen stool, sipping a pale pink rose. Clara, 2 years my senior, was the family darling, the one with the delicate dreams. Her latest venture was an artisanal bakery, the Sourdough Sanctuary, specializing in gluten-free, organic everything, a concept with a high mortality rate. I tossed the hard copy of my signed term sheet onto the granite counter, the paper crackling with my triumph. The pre-seed round is closed, I announced, forcing the casual tone. 1.5 million. The valuation is aggressive, but the revenue projections support it. My mother, Beatrice, was arranging Capri's skewers, seemingly far more interested in the alignment of the basil leaves than my multi-million-dollar venture. She didn't look up immediately. That's nice, Elara. But we need to discuss Clara's capital. The air thinned. My father, Arthur, shifted uncomfortably at the head of the island. Clara needs a jumpstart, sweetie. The high street location is perfect, but the fit-out and security deposit are immense. Clara offered me a fragile, calculated smile. The bank won't sign off on the collateral without the initial $200,000. It's impossible, Elara. I leaned against the cool metal of the Sub-Zero fridge, feeling the heat start in my core. And what about it? Did you want my advice on the debt structure? I can optimize her 3-year cash flow model in an afternoon. My mother finally met my eyes, her look a sickening blend of pity and maternal obligation. We've decided to give her the initial capital, darling, she said, her voice soft, final. $200,000. The monetary figure wasn't the blow. I'd just secured 7 times that from strangers. The implication was the shrapnel. You're giving Clara $200,000 for a niche bakery? I asked, my voice flat, dangerously quiet. When I was 18 and needed $5,000 to register the patent for my first algorithm, the one that got me into the accelerator, you told me I needed to take out a student loan to learn the value of investment. That was a high-risk tech idea, Elara, my father argued, his face hardening. This is a tangible community business. It's different. It's a guaranteed failure funded by emotional patronage. My venture is poised for a 9-figure exit. You actively funded my high-risk peers with debt, and now you're gifting her this fortune. I stepped back. My mother made the decision final, delivering the line that became the blueprint for the next decade of my life. She reached out, placing a condescending hand on my arm. You're strong, Elara. You'll understand. Clara needs this more. You're already a success. You don't need us to validate you financially. Now, can you set the table, please? I understood. I understood that my strength was the justification for their neglect. I understood that my independence made me invisible, while Clara's fragility made her precious. They weren't just funding her business. They were cementing their own relevance. They were invalidating me to prove they were still needed. I pulled my arm away, carefully, deliberately. My term sheet felt like a prop. I looked at the 3 of them, my father, relieved of his guilt, my mother, satisfied with her righteous compassion, and Clara, twitching with quiet triumph. I won't be staying for dinner, I said, picking up my document. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, surgical clarity. And I won't be helping Clara with anything. I walked out and drove toward the city, but my eyes were fixed on the High Street area. That small, 2-story brick building Clara wanted so desperately. I wouldn't just be successful. I wouldn't just be wealthy. I would acquire the very infrastructure of their pride, the assets that controlled their fate. I would show them what happens when the strong one stops understanding and starts owning. The 7 years that followed were not a period of growth. They were an act of focused, singular creation forged in the heat of that betrayal. "You're strong, Elara. You'll understand," became the relentless hammer driving every decision. It was a motivation. It was a curse I turned into fuel. Aethel became a juggernaut. My platform didn't just automate regulatory compliance. It predicted it, saving major institutions billions in potential fines and labor costs. We completed our Series B at a $450 million valuation. The financial world saw a CEO of 33, cold, driven, relentless. They had no idea the engine was a 7-year-old slight. I bought assets not for pleasure, but for symbolic weight. First, the $12 million penthouse. 70 floors up, overlooking the financial district, it was a sterile, glass and steel fortress. It was designed to house one thing: my victory. It was the quantifiable proof that the money they withheld was irrelevant. I built this entire monument with the strength you dismissed. My next acquisition was tactical. I spent months mapping the high street commercial district where Clara's bakery, the sourdough sanctuary, was located. It wasn't enough to buy her building. I wanted the silent control of the entire block. Using a complex, multi-layered LLC structure, involving entities in 3 different states and an offshore holding company, I spent 18 months executing a quiet, hostile real estate acquisition. When the dust settled, I, through a newly created holding entity named Vance Acquisitions Holdings LLC, owned the entire commercial strip, including the red brick building where Clara baked. My property management firm was given one instruction: treat the tenants professionally but ruthlessly. No exceptions. They had no idea their ultimate principal was the daughter of one of the tenants. Clara's below-market lease was set to expire in 4 months. The news of my family filtered through. Clara's business was sputtering. She had followed my parents' bad advice, borrowing against their retirement home for a failed expansion. They had covered that debt with a vicious, high-interest commercial loan against their principal residence. Their world was collapsing exactly where they thought they were safest. I was 35 when the call came. It was my father, Arthur. His voice, once full of entitled resonance, was thin and reedy. "Elara? It's Dad. We need your help. It's a serious situation." I was signing off on a major investment round for Aethel, the $50 million figure a casual stroke of my pen. His crisis was a speck of dust in my universe. I put him on speaker. "Define serious, Arthur." He laid out the disaster. Clara's debt had triggered the high-interest clause on their home loan. The real estate shock was the final blow. The new management company for Clara's storefront, ruthless and cold, had demanded a 40% rent hike and 3 months security deposit for the new 10-year lease. "We can't afford it, Elara," he choked out. "We lose the bakery, we lose that income, and we lose the house. We need a bridge loan. $200,000. It's nothing to you. It would save us." So, I summarized my tone clinical. "The tangible investment you made in Clara is now taking your entire retirement and your home. And you need me, the high-risk venture, to bail you out. Don't do this, Elara," he pleaded. "We know we were wrong. You're our daughter." "And who owns that property, Arthur?" I asked, pushing the leverage point. "Do you know the name of the holding company that is driving you into ruin?" He mumbled the name. "Vance Acquisitions. Impossible to contact." "I see." I leaned back, looking out over the city. "You and Beatrice come to my place tomorrow. 7 o'clock. Tell Clara to come, too. Bring all the records. I want to see the damage myself." The next evening, I stood in my penthouse, the air cold and sterile, waiting for them to arrive. I wore my tailored charcoal suit, the uniform of my new reality. My success was the atmosphere, the pressure they had to breathe. They arrived looking diminished. Clara was pale, her usual poise shattered. My parents were weary, burdened by the consequences of their misplaced investment. They stood awkwardly in the center of the vast living room. "Elara," my mother tried, her voice wavering. "This place, it's breathtaking." "It is," I agreed, my voice devoid of warmth. It cost $12 million cash. You learn a lot about the value of investment when you're forced to build your own safety net. I didn't offer them a seat until I commanded it.
Sit.
Clara, the financial records now. She fumbled the disorganized folder onto the glass coffee table. I didn't open it. Before we discuss the rescue, we discuss the foundation, I stated, locking eyes with my father. 7 years ago, you invested $200,000 in Clara's perceived need, telling me I had to understand. I want to know exactly what that dismissal meant, standing here, now that her need has bankrupted you. My father's shoulders slumped. We were trying to help her, Elara. We thought you were fine. We were mistaken. We mistook your capability for lack of necessity. You confused my independence with indifference, I countered, my eyes burning. You paid Clara to be dependent on you, to validate your role as parents. You dismissed me because I made you feel obsolete. And now, that dependency has brought you here. My mother started to cry, silent tears tracking down her carefully made-up face. We love you, Elara. We thought we were showing strength by letting you stand alone. Love is not earned by financial neglect, I replied, feeling nothing for her distress. And the strength I have now is the strength I built in spite of you, not because of you. I let the silence settle, crushing them under the weight of my victory. Then I delivered the first strategic blow. The $200,000 bridge loan is irrelevant, Arthur, I said, pulling a crisp document from my desk. Your core problem is that you are negotiating with the wrong landlord. I slid the document, the legal confirmation of the beneficial ownership of Vance Acquisitions, Holdings, LLC, across the table. The name at the top was mine. I incorporated that entity 7 years ago. The moment I left your house, I announced, the finality of the statement echoing in the vast room. I acquired the High Street building and the entire block a year and a half ago. The manager, who demanded the 40% rent hike, works for me. I am the landlord, Clara. I own the ground the sourdough sanctuary operates on. Clara gasped, utterly broken. My parents stared at the document, their disbelief turning to stark terror. You set this up? My father whispered, his voice ravaged. I established leverage, I corrected. You taught me the value of tangible assets and non-negotiable contracts. And I understood. Your lease is non-renewable because I instructed it to be. You are facing eviction because I willed it. That, Arthur, is the true meaning of financial control. And now, all the leverage is mine. They were utterly defeated, standing on the edge of financial ruin, forced to beg the daughter they had invalidated. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the city lights. The revenge was complete. I had the power, but as I watched the lights, the emptiness I had felt for 7 years was still there, a perfect, polished void. The destruction would be meaningless. The real twist was not in taking everything, but in controlling the terms of their survival. I turned back from the window. I am not going to ruin you. I am not going to take your house, and I am not going to destroy Clara's business. That would only validate the petty, transactional nature you cultivated in me. My mother looked up, hope flickering. Elara, we will pay you back. No, you won't. You will pay me the debt you truly owe, the debt of acknowledgement. I will define the terms of your survival. I laid out the new contract. First, the rent increase is void. Clara gets a 10-year lease at the original, below-market rate. But I am taking a 20% equity stake in the sourdough sanctuary. Not as a loan, but as an investment. I want a board seat and monthly audited statements. If the business fails, I will watch it fail transparently. I looked at my father. Second, the high-interest loan against your house is dissolved. I will personally buy the debt from the lender and consolidate it under a private instrument at a 0% interest rate. You have 7 years to repay the principal. Default, and the rate snaps back to commercial prime, and I take ownership of the house. The sheer generosity of the 0% interest rate stunned them into silence. And the third condition, I said, making them feel the cold steel of my power one last time. You will never confuse my self-sufficiency with a lack of need. You will never dismiss my ambition. You will call me once a month, not to ask for favors, but to inquire about my life, my business, and my success."
They signed.
They signed because they had no choice, but the relief was palpable. As they stood to leave, my father took my hand, his grip frail but sincere. "Elara," he choked out, "I am truly sorry. We were wrong. We should have supported you. You are magnificent. We just didn't see it until you made it impossible not to." My mother reached out, touching my arm gently. This time I allowed it. "I just wanted you to be happy, Elara." "I am," I replied, the lie catching in my throat, but the gesture of forgiveness felt oddly freeing. "Go home. Get your finances in order." The door closed, leaving me alone. The revenge was complete, the punishment delivered. But the emotional void remained, cold and hard as the granite counter where the slight began. The final element of peace came 6 months later. I met Aiden in an adult pottery class, a desperate attempt by my assistant to inject humanity into my life. Aiden, an architect, was grounded, quiet, and completely unconcerned with my title or net worth. He saw the tension, the guarded fortress I maintained. "You treat that clay like it owes you money," he observed one evening. "It does," I admitted, laughing faintly. "Everything I touch has to yield." "Does it, though?" he countered, his hands effortlessly shaping a curve. "What if it just existed and you just enjoyed shaping it?" Aiden was the first genuinely non-transactional connection I'd had since childhood. He required nothing from me. He only offered companionship and quiet stability. A year later, we were sharing a warm, book-filled brownstone. The sterile penthouse was now purely corporate. My life was finally rooted, not in steel and glass, but in warmth and mutual respect. The absolute end came on my 36th birthday. My family took me to a quiet Italian restaurant. The conversation was easy. They talked about Clara's business finally turning a profit, my mother's newfound volunteering, the relief of the zero-interest loan. After the plates were cleared, my father reached across the table, taking my hand. "Elara," he said, his voice clear with genuine remorse. "We have to say it one last time, face to face. We are profoundly sorry. We relied on your strength instead of supporting it. You are everything we hoped you would be. We are proud of you, not because you saved us, but because of who you became." I felt the last shard of cold resolve melt away. "Thank you," I said, the words genuine. "I accept your apology. All of it." I looked at Aiden, who was watching me with silent support. 7 years ago, I continued, addressing my family, I decided that if I couldn't earn your respect, I would buy your necessity. The revenge, acquiring the building, holding the contracts, forcing the acknowledgement, that was necessary. It was the only way I could separate my self-worth from your approval. I had to prove that I could acquire the very ground you stood on. That independence, that architecture of self-sufficiency, that was the true prize, I concluded, smiling warmly. Your acceptance now is a gift, but it is secondary. I no longer need it to validate me. I validated myself. I raised my glass. To understanding, I toasted. The kind that sets you free. We drank. The cold was gone. The drive was now purpose. I had the power, the peace, and the person. The architecture of my life was finally complete. The strong one had won, not by destroying the past, but by building a future so strong, the past could no longer touch her.